We're talking about empowering people, empowering colleagues. And so the first question I have to you is just, reflect a few seconds and just shoot in the phone. What do you think are the benefits of empowering employees? And when I say employees, I don't like that term because employees only means that you're employing somebody. There's not much value into it. I prefer to call employees partners, but I'll explain why later. So right now, what do you think are the benefits of empowering your partners or your colleagues? I'll give you 10 seconds, and as soon as you start writing, they're coming on the screen. So we're going to have a nice interaction here. So you can continue entering the things. But my point here is I think we've got an audience that really understands the positive benefits of empowering. Having said that, if you look in the real world, you'll see that there are actually very few companies, organizations who actually have that as an agenda to empower their colleagues or their employees. But the benefits are, of course, enormous. Positive atmosphere, growth, confidence, joy of working. And I'm going to keep these words in mind because we're going to reuse them later in the presentation. Because my next question now is, how would you rate your current job? So if you don't have a job, it was your previous job, but you have like 5 possibilities. You can never imagine doing anything else. You have the most rewarding and the most satisfying job. You're quite happy with your current position. Your job could be better, or my job is not very exciting most of the days. So, okay, 17, 18, 20 people. Okay, so this is actually a quite interesting result because it doesn't at all reflect what's happening in the real world. So I can conclude from this audience that either there are quite a few entrepreneurs, because usually entrepreneurs, they score quite high, or some of you are managers with not so many managers above you, or some other kind of situations. Because the fact is that if you look at what's happening in the real world, 50, 60, and in some countries 70% of employees do not like their job. They find it meaningless. They just go there just to have a salary, just to bring back some money home and to run their life. If you don't believe me, you can just go to that book. Who has read this book? Not many, so shame I should have sold them tonight. I could have. So it's a really, really interesting book by David Graeber. Unfortunately, he passed away. But he did a real study to understand in which kind of jobs do people like their jobs and people don't like their jobs. And when I saw these figures, when I was reading it, I was actually in my own company before I sold it. And I was like in a really bad, dark valley. And then I read this and I thought, okay, but if 60% of people don't even like their job, it doesn't really matter if I'm in a dark place right now because it's my company. I decide what I do. I'm in control of my life and it's up to me to get up again, focus again, and move on. So this was just a little side comment. The third question here is, how would you rate your manager? So don't worry, it's totally anonymous. I'm not taking any phone numbers or anything. So he or she is a superstar, a great tutor, he or she is okay, he or she doesn't get it, or he or she is awful to work with. Now that we've taken the shyness away, now I can ask directly, so who has answered he or she is a superstar? And do you want to give, like in one sentence, why do you believe your manager? Why do you say your manager is a superstar? Let's take you. Super. Another one? Okay. Okay. So we can say that this is a little bit biased as well. So I don't know how many. Are there 14 people who came here with their boss tonight, or? Anyway, what I want to say with this, because we're talking a bit about empowerment and empowering people. So fantastic results, right? And I hope you also believe it, that she is what you said. But I would say 2 things here. The first one is that it's amazing to have a manager which you believe is a superstar or a great tutor or a great coach. And so But do remember that even those people have a kind of lifespan of 2 to 5 years in terms of their knowledge and what they're actually bringing to you. So if you're looking at a 40 years career, keep on thinking about who will be your next superstar, or who will be you learning from based on what kind of career you want to do, right? And at the other end of the spectrum, you know, he or she is awful, so I'm not going to ask who wrote that, or he or she doesn't get it, never gets it, and so on. So, but here, the interesting thing here is that you really have to think about moving. You know, Don was saying life is about change. You have to think about yourself, or taking care of yourself. This is part of taking care of yourself. If you've got a manager who's down there, you know, think about moving. You're not in the right space for yourself, right? So the next thing I want to bring on is a quote from Sarah O'Connor. She wrote an article 2 weeks ago in the Financial Times, and she said, you know, a bad manager can turn a good job bad overnight, you know. And this is just the reality. So if you feel that your job is really going sour, it's not necessarily about you or the actual job, and so often it's got to do about the managers. And to put this in a visual picture for you, or for those who are so happy to only have good managers, this is how it smells like the bad milk, you know, if you have suddenly a change of management in your company, or if you come in a new company and you find out this is not the right management for you. The next thing is, she also wrote, and I think she really nailed it, is it possible to hate your job but love your work? And this is, she's been actually reflecting on the initial book that I showed you, where she said, okay, if so many people find their jobs meaningless, but how many people actually would love to do their job if they were in a different environment with different people? And suddenly this 60% really falls down to much, much, much lower levels. And my key here and the reflection is about, you know, it's the kind of mindset that you want to bring at work. And the important thing in the company is also the management and the management style. What kind of messages are they bringing? How are they training people? How are they empowering their partners and colleagues? We know from the very first slide and all the examples that you gave, right, that with empowerment comes trust, joy of work, mental well-being, which is a very, very important aspect in your work, right? You're going there 8 days a week, 220 days a year. If you're not happy, you're not doing anything good to yourself. Empowerment also liberates the creativity. It encourages the motivation, a boost of motivation, dedication, and so much more, like we saw on the first slide. Now, how do you actually empower people in a working environment, right? So in other words, how do you live and breathe empowerment on a daily basis? So as I said in the video, I don't know how many of you saw the video that I posted on LinkedIn for this event tonight, but I said I was also a bad manager. Like 20 years ago, I believe I was a really poor people manager. I had no experience, and I had really, really bad examples. I was working in corporate in France. It was elderly men in a French management system who were only like top-down approach. And if you were not there before they came and left after they left, you were a bad employee, basically. So I've been really reflecting and changing myself and changing my style of management over the years, and really thinking about this kind of empowerment. Now, this is the last question, but here is a typical organization, right? And here we're not going to use the phone, just raise the hand. So how many of you think that the managers should be on number 1, number 2, number 3? So number 1, who would place the manager or themselves if they're a manager on the number 1? Right? I need to have 100% at the end, so 3. Okay, so a few here. Number 2, you would put the manager here. And number 3, you put the manager down there. Okay, so we don't have time. I wanted to have a debate on that. We can have a debate maybe afterwards. But the idea here is that in a traditional structure, you would always put your managers up here, right? I understand that some people put it down here, but as you see how this is shaped, you can't have more managers than you can have employees, right? So basically, for me, the true structure is actually this. So yes, the manager is number one, but you are here not to lead and have leaders and followers. You are here at the bottom to inspire and to lead, to support people, to live their dreams, to get their responsibilities, and to reach the common goals for the entire company. Now, another aspect which I think is super, super important, and I think most companies actually totally miss the point. We are trying to change the way managing people or going about doing the business, but we're using the same vocabulary as we were using in the 19th and maybe even 18th century, right? So what we did in the last venture, we had a really interesting workshop where we said, what kind of words do we want to ban from our vocabulary, and with what words would we like to replace them? So we had the long list. For tonight, I've just got a few examples. But for example, this was the first one I told you, right? Move away from an employee. It's so last century kind of way of talking about your colleagues, and talk about partners. Why do you need to be 15 years in the company before you're a partner? You can be a partner from day one. We're working together to solve the problems together, right? Partners for me are also suppliers, and partners for me are also clients, because we're working together on solving some different goals and issues. Now, managers, you don't manage people, you know, you manage software, you manage a product, you manage a financial plan. But for me, you don't manage people, you empower them. So maybe this is a new word, but we should go from managers to empowerers. Meetings, I banned the word meetings in my last venture. Meeting is also so like useless kind of thing, right? So we transform meetings to workshop, but it's not just a question of changing the word, it's changing what are you then going to do. So in meetings, usually is blah, 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 maybe an agenda, maybe not, and a long to-do list at the end. Here in the workshop, we know specifically who is coming in the workshop, those who are going to contribute to solve a specific issue. At the end of this workshop, we don't have a long to-do list because we've solved everything during the workshop, right? So making life nicer, more efficient, etc. Now, the last one I need to put a little bit of time on is employee evaluation, you know. It's like, I'm like, yeah, employee evaluation. So you're going to evaluate your employee on which basis, you know? It's so condescending in a way, and it doesn't resonate with all the other words which I told to you about partners and so. An employee evaluation is absolutely zero respect, right? You're just looking at the person as somebody who's going to do something for you because you decided, etc., etc. So we change the yearly employee evaluation to iterative pit stops. Now, pit stops, for those who are a little bit familiar with Formula One, is that when the driver or the control unit thinks there's something to talk about, we take the driver of the Formula One in the pit stop, we change a tire, we adjust something, we talk about something, etc., and then we're back in the race. So here, instead of being the manager who's calling in for an employee evaluation, we have, you know, said that, okay, any partner at any time can ask for a pit stop meeting. And it actually worked really, really well because it's both ways, it's really respectful for each other, it's problem solving. So in a nutshell, you know, I could talk about empowering and empowerment for much more time, but 3 things which I think are key to empowering your partners is that you're moving from a meaningless jobs to more meaningful jobs. The second thing is that you're actually reducing the stress and the pressure on your colleagues and building also this kind of mental resilience for them. And thirdly, you're transforming poor performance towards leveraged outcomes. And this is the conclusion for why we should actually empower all of our partners. Thank you.